Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Sorry, my mic is muted. All right. I'm gonna have to do without this microphone today. So welcome, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I am just using my phone's microphone today. So I will try and be as clear as I can. Welcome. Happy Friday. All right, Laura, thank you for tagging a friend. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. How's everyone doing? Annette, good afternoon to you. How are you? Laura, hello. Welcome. All right, this is a live stream, so we'll give it a few minutes for everybody to log on. You guys already know the drill, especially if you are usually here every single Friday. And if you are, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome. We're a special needs advocacy group, and my name is Caleb. I'm an advocate here where we talk all things special needs related. And so each week we got a new topic. Today's topic we're doing IHSS and some very common reasons, 5 specifically, on how your IHSS hours can be removed or reduced, or you can be affected, right? So we'll talk about that. So hopefully it can be some things that maybe you can avoid, or maybe it's things that you've done unknowingly, and maybe you can provide some closure if you lost your hours and need some help. Laura, I'm doing well as well. Thank you. Did you get my text? I did, and I have been super horrible at responding, Laura. Sorry, but thank you. You're welcome to bug me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Annette, good afternoon to you. Felicia, good afternoon. Annette, doing well, busy as always. I hear you. And happy Friday to you, Felicia. All right. So we've got a good group here. So if you want to tag a friend like Laura did, or share this stream to a support group, or somebody you know, that helps us get these out, bring in more viewers, so we can have more people in the comment section asking some good questions and kind of help things flow. So thanks for understanding, Laura. Appreciate you. All right. So yeah, today we put up our title here. I'm going to jump right into it. 5 most common reasons families lose hours with IHSS. And so we're going to talk a little bit about maybe how that would happen, and what we can do to avoid those common, either it's mistakes or just reasons in general, right? Some of these things are kind of out of control, while others are things that you can control and avoid. So we got some good stuff today. So let me pull up, excuse me, I'm sorry, my notes for today. Let's see. Okay. And if you have any specific questions, you guys already know the drill. Drop it in the comment section. Let me know what's going on. If you have questions about IHSS, Regional Center, IEPs, I'll try my best to help you and answer as many questions as I possibly can. And so, yeah, it can be within this topic or outside the topic. Not a problem at all. And so really quick, just to tap in for those who are new here, who maybe don't know what IHSS is. So IHSS is, I'm sure if you follow the support groups, if you have a kiddo with autism or a loved one with disabilities, you probably follow a lot of support groups, do a lot of reading and watching of YouTube videos and things to kind of understand the diagnosis that you may have, or understand the culture and the environment that you're a part of now. And something you'll come across very quickly is something called IHSS, in-home support services. So for most of you today watching, you probably have IHSS, or you've heard about it and you know all about it. So this is more for those who don't know. So IHSS is a benefit that basically can pay you as a caregiver if you're like the parent of a loved one with special needs. Or again, if you are somebody who is disabled and you're looking for caregiving services, you can apply for this as well. So it's a benefit of Medi-Cal that essentially gives money to a caregiver to provide needs to help you. Okay. So that is what IHSS is. So if you have any questions on that, let me know. I'm happy to break down the basics. Hello and happy Friday to you, Estella. Thanks for being here. All right. So reason number 1. We're jumping right into it, okay? So reason number 1 is going to be missing or incorrect timesheets. So there's a few different things we can kind of cover with this. I'm going to kind of go over some of the basics. So you will have, when you apply for IHSS and your child or your loved one gets established with a specific amount of hours, 40 a month, 100 a month, 200 a month, whatever it may be, it is going to be your responsibility as the caregiver, the paid provider, to calculate your hours every single month, add them onto that timesheet, and submit them accordingly. Okay. And if you are not the timesheet signator, then you have somebody else who signs off on your timesheets for you to confirm that you work those hours and whatnot, right? So for parents who are doing this job, sometimes they can sign their own time cards. So if that's you, feel free to let us know how the timesheet signatory situation works in your household. The rules have kind of gone up and down on that recently. Some counties are also more strict on it than others. Excuse me. But a lot of times where if it's like maybe a single parent and it's a single parent with their child who has autism, they will oftentimes sign their own time cards and they're allowed to. But if you were told by your social worker that you're not allowed to do that anymore, you have to get a friend or a neighbor, you're welcome to share that experience because I've heard it multiple different ways. I can't cite a regulation specifically right now because I haven't done the research, but we have seen it being utilized in that way. And then other times having another parent or another person sign off on the time card to make sure there's no fraud going on, right? Excuse me. All right. And making sure the timesheets are on time as well. Of course, we would recommend just setting reminders. Of course, you want to get paid, right? So don't wait too long to submit your time card. Make sure you do it on the same days every single month. That just makes it easy. And avoid holidays and weekends and stuff. But again, you can work those days and submit your time cards then as well. So it's not like a regular Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job as a caregiver with this program. Okay. All right. If anybody has questions on that so far, please let me know. Excuse me. Another quick timesheet issue is a lot of people will apply for IHSS, they'll get approved, and then they'll appeal because they disagree with the amount of hours that were approved for. And when they do that, sometimes they will withhold from actually claiming on the hours. Because let's just say they wanted to get protective supervision for their child. They applied for this. They went through the application process, the assessment process, and they feel very strongly that their child meets the criteria for something like protective supervision. But when they get the notice of action showing the approval of hours, they only got 20 hours a month. Whereas with protective supervision, they'd have closer to maybe 220 a month, right? Because protective supervision is technically 195 hours a month on its own as a task category. But for the sake of numbers, we'll just call it an extra 200 hours, right? So your notice of action shows that you only have 20 hours, which means you got protective supervision denied, right? So you file that appeal and you go through the appeal process, which may take 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then because you're like, you know what, I just want to get through the appeal. And then if I can get protective supervision or the result, that's when I'll go ahead and start claiming on those hours, those 20 hours a month. Oftentimes I've heard social workers say, hey, you have to claim your hours within 90 days of approval or else you'll lose out on the back pay. I'm gonna let you know right now, there's no regulation that I'm aware of that says that. If you have something you'd like to share, you're welcome to share. If Dakota, if you're watching, or Teresa, if you have any regulations you want to share on that, please do. But I haven't found anything to support a social worker saying that. So if you've gone through the process and you still haven't signed up to be a provider, you haven't claimed your hours, and it's been many months since the approval, whatever your reason may be, it doesn't really matter, but you should still be able to claim those hours. The only time that would be a problem is if you went years without claiming them, right? For no reason. That IHSS would just see this as kind of like a stagnant case and they'll just close things. So those are just, that's one of many reasons. So when it comes to timesheets and time cards, just, not doing it correctly, missing information, not doing it in a timely manner. These are all ways that you can lose hours or get the benefit temporarily paused, or you can be technically taken off as a provider. Okay. So things to be considered. All right. I don't see any questions so far, so I'm just going to keep going down my line here of some of these reasons. Okay. So reason number 2. This one's a big one. It's probably one of the most common. Not updating changes. Okay. So if you move, you have to notify IHSS. So address, your living arrangements change. That one kind of depends. And behavioral changes, things like that. Okay. So if you have a new address, there's 2 things we have to consider. One, if you moved out of the county into a whole nother county, that's a county transfer, which means you have to notify the county immediately when you move. And they have to start the transfer process to the new county for them to get your case involved with that new office. So every county in California has their own IHSS office, and you have to be enrolled if you live in that county, you have to be enrolled into that IHSS office for that county. Okay. So if you move and you wait too long to let them know about that transfer, they can penalize you. They can even just terminate the benefit. We've seen a lot of stuff like that. So make sure that if you are going to move, even if it's still within the same county, wherever you move, you got to notify IHSS, you got to notify Medi-Cal, you got to notify SSI, but you got to notify regional center, right? But of course, notify IHSS as soon as you do, because that can affect things. Because if you don't, let's just say you forget, and IHSS does a yearly visit. Maybe it's the yearly assessment, or maybe it's an unannounced visit, and you're not home. You don't even live there anymore. They may assume you just left the country. They don't know, right? So that is a very, very common way that people lose out on their hours or get terminated completely from the benefit. Okay, so make sure you stay on top of that. If you're going to move or you have thoughts on moving, be on top of that. Right. All right. You guys are quiet so far. We've got a good chunk of people. You don't have any questions? Please let me know. I'm happy to answer any question that you have. And if you've had trouble with your hours, or recently you had a reduction in hours, you're welcome to share. Share maybe what categories that was affected in, or maybe why you think IHSS reduced the hours. Let us know. Love to see if we can help. I want to talk about behavioral changes actually real quick before we move on to reason number 3. I'm kind of moving through this outline pretty quickly. So behavioral changes as well. A lot of times too, when you have something, this is going to be more so for something like a protective supervision, but excuse me, this will also apply to other categories like dressing, bathing, toileting. So as you know, IHSS has to do yearly evaluation. So every year they will come to your home and they're going to provide an evaluation to assess if things have changed or not. And so they have to determine if you got approved for 4 hours a week in bathing, bathing. I cannot speak today. The bathing category, right? Bathing, oral hygiene, and grooming. And you expressed the needs at the time last year, and they granted the hours accordingly. But now it's a new year, and they ask you if things have changed. And you say no, and then you describe what you do for them when it comes to bathing, and you don't even realize that what you're describing is very different from last year. And so the social workers will take note of that. And if they compare the notes from last year and it shows that there's been progression, it shows that, little Johnny here actually can bathe himself a lot better than last year, then they're going to reduce the hours, right? So be on top of, try and keep record and track of what you say each year. So year to year, you kind of know that if not much has changed, you're actually telling the truth, right? You may do that by accident, but it's important to note that there's so much more to IHSS than just the big picture of hours. All of these hours are broken down into all these different little categories. So you have to kind of know your recipient, your child, or whoever this is, and what you share year to year so that you can keep track of how those hours fluctuate over time. Okay, so just a little tip there. Annette, you said, Caleb, is there an exact wait time on an appeal process? I have a case that we appealed in December, and we have yet to hear anything from the center. Let's see here. So when you say the center, are you talking about regional center? Or are you talking about an IHSS appeal? If you're talking about an IHSS appeal, I'll let you know right now, they're super, super slow. So the average time for an appeal with IHSS is going to be probably 3 to 6 months. So if you did it in December, you should be hearing soon. If you haven't heard already, there should be a hearing put on the calendar pretty soon. But let me know if you're referring to regional center or IHSS. That might help a little bit. But you can, if it's IHSS, you can log into your ACMS account. So it's acms.org. I can't remember the link. We can maybe link it here. When you file an appeal, your appeal gets opened, and there's a website you can actually log into to see the status of your appeal. And it'll show you the due date for that appeal, where the hearing has to be done and a decision by a judge has to be made. And so if you're approaching that deadline and there's still not even a hearing yet, you can kind of bug state appeals. You can call them and ask them, hey, how can we get this moving along, right? Also, too, when you file an appeal on IHSS, you will be notified by the county, and that you did say it's IHSS. Perfect. So when you file an appeal on IHSS, your case gets transferred from the social worker, from the county level, to an appeals specialist, an appeals officer, appeals rep, whatever their title is going to be in that county. Their job is to help design their position to protect the social worker's denial of hours. However, they are responsible for reaching out to you prior to actually having a hearing. So their job is to try and connect with you to see if they can come to some resolution so that you don't have to go in front of a judge. If it's been almost 4 months since you filed an appeal, you should have heard from an appeals rep at this point. But if you haven't, then I would reach out to state appeals and let them know that and say, hey, I haven't heard from anybody. And how can we get this moving along? But yeah, since December, it's kind of that's a big time gap there. But I would say that you're probably going to see some dates pretty soon. I think a hearing will probably land on the calendar pretty quickly. Andrea, how long for the reassessment process? And answer. So for annual reassessments, usually it's every year around the same time. And then when they are writing up their decision, that notice of action, usually I'd say a good time frame is 3 to 6 weeks. That's a pretty common time frame. It kind of depends on how many changes there's been, or if you're trying to get something like protective supervision. It depends on how much information the social worker plans on reviewing with their supervisor, right? But I'd say a good time frame is going to be 3 to 6 weeks that you can expect to hear back from your social worker after you've had your evaluation. Okay. Now the rules are that if they technically have to make a decision within 90 days. Well, technically it's 45 days, but I'm just gonna give the county some grace here. Technically, they have 90 days from the assessment to write up a decision. So if it's been 2 full months since your assessment and you still haven't received any word from the social worker about a decision yet on the notice of action, then it's time. You're gonna have to start filing some complaints. You got to reach out to the county. You got to reach out to the social worker. If there's no movement and it's been 90 days, they're out of compliance. Therefore, you have every right to file an appeal. You have every right to kind of press the issue there. So if anybody had an assessment and it's been almost 3 months and you still haven't heard anything, I would recommend following up with the county, or if you've already done that and you're just kind of at a point where you don't know what to do, give our office a call. I'd love to see how we might be able to help you. Jackie, how long to hear a result after the hearing is completed? Okay, so for hearings, so if you don't know already, the judge does not make a same day ruling, hardly ever. They can, but usually they do not. Oh, Estella, I'm sorry, I missed your comment. I'm going to come back to you, Estella, so don't go anywhere if you're still watching. So how long after the hearing is done? So usually the judge will be given 30 to 60 days to make a decision. So it kind of depends on your due date for the deadline. And if the due date is within a couple of weeks, so let's just say that things took forever and it finally got scheduled and you finally have your hearing with the judge, but the judge says, hey, we have a due date that's technically in 2 weeks from now. I'm not going to have enough time. They'll usually request a time waiver, and that time waiver is usually 30 days. So if that's the case, then 30 days plus 2 weeks, you're looking at about, 40, 50 days, right? If my math's correct, 6 weeks. So that's usually how it works. So usually a judge's appeal decision is going to be within 30 to 60 days of the hearing date itself. However, they don't have to take all that time. We've seen judges make decisions within days of the hearing. That doesn't happen often. And on occasion, it can be resolved in the hearing itself. Usually a judge will not stamp a decision right then and there and say, this is what we're going to do. Usually, if there's going to be a decision made in the hearing with the judge, usually it's because of a stipulation between both parties. So maybe you and the county come to an agreement and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this child doesn't qualify for protective supervision, or maybe based on this information, we've come to the conclusion that he does qualify. Therefore, Your Honor, you don't need to make a decision. We agree he needs this, right? So that's how that can be made in the hearing itself, but usually the judges will not offer a stipulation unless they see that both parties are coming to an agreement. So if the judge is left up to make that decision, they will be given typically 30 to 60 days. Thank you, Teresa, for linking ACMS. So if you have an open appeal right now, or you want to file an appeal, you can actually do that yourself by logging on to this ACMS website. You can create an account and you can see your appeal from there. Estella, sorry, going back to you. Hopefully you're still here. Will pay stubs eventually go paperless? So they are, I'm sorry, pay stubs. So timesheets are paperless, right? Is everybody receiving paper copy pay stubs? Let me know. I haven't thought about that, I guess. I'm not too sure, Estella. Something we'll have to look into. Justine, can I apply for IHSS for 2 kids at the same time? Yes, you can. So it doesn't matter how many people are in the home who may need IHSS and something like protected supervision or another benefit like SSI, regional center. Yeah, if you've got multiple children in your home and maybe even grandma or another family member or a spouse and they need IHSS, they all can get IHSS. You can apply for all of them. The only caveat is how many hours you yourself can claim as a provider. So, excuse me. So as the provider, you can only claim up to a certain amount of hours. And so if you have 3 recipients in the home, 2 children and then grandma, and they all have 200 plus hours a month, you might have 600 hours amongst all those people. You can't claim that many hours. So you'd have to get other providers to come in and help. You might have to get an exemption, which kind of gives you a little bit more room to claim a little bit more than the maximum. So things like that. But yes, you can apply for both children. Absolutely. Giovanna, in the last annual assessment, I got my hours reduced because I let them know my daughter was scared to go into the doctor's office, so I couldn't get her in to go. But just last month, we got her to go in 3 different doctor's appointments. So I call them back and let them know or wait until next year's assessment. I guess that depends. So a change like that is important, right? But if the hours were reduced and we want those hours back, if that's enough information to get those hours back, then yes. I guess I'm confused because you said that you got your hours reduced because you let them know that your daughter was scared to go to the doctor's office. So, okay, so I think you're saying that they took away some time for doctor visits because you weren't taking your child to the doctor, right? So did they just say, oh, well, since your child's too scared, we're not even gonna like give you hours for doctor visits? If that's the case, then yes, I would let them know and say, hey, things have changed. She's had tons of doctor's visits and she's going now. I don't know, but yes, I would. I'd probably bring that up. You can wait until the assessment if you want to. Usually, doctor's visits, it's not a significant amount of time, but for some people, it can be. If you have weekly visits and stuff like that, it could bring up the hours quite a bit. So I would say it's up to you, Giovanna. If your assessment's not going to happen for another 6+ months, then sure, I would maybe call your social worker and bring this up. But if your assessment's just right around the corner, then I just maybe wait until the social worker comes by. All right, so I'll come back to your last couple of questions here. Let's go back to our outline. So I think we are on assessment number 3, which actually kind of goes in line with what we're talking about, assessments, right? So another very common way that somebody may lose hours is because of what happens at their assessment. So reassessment issues can stem from a lot of different things. And so I have a couple of examples I'll share, but I would like to hear from you. So much like, who just said that? Giovanna. Much like Giovanna's experience, there was an issue at the assessment, which prompted the reduction of hours, right? Thankfully, she didn't lose all of her hours. She didn't lose IHSS, but there was a reduction there, which is the point of today's live, okay? So if you have an example of something like that, please feel free to share so that we can talk about it. Somebody else can learn from that. I'd love to hear your experiences. So oftentimes people will share things at an assessment, kind of like what we talked about earlier towards kind of the beginning of the stream here, where you share information that might have been different from last year, right? If you share new information and it shows that this child or this loved one has progressed and they're doing better in that task, then you're going to get a reduction of hours. Okay. Another thing is you don't share enough, right? So if the social worker asks you a question in regards to time for time spent or effort in that task and you don't really elaborate on it, you don't describe it well enough, they may not continue on with the amount of hours that they have. Or if they have 0 hours, they may not increase it at all, right? So be sure to share appropriately, but within reason, right? You don't want to share too much where you're maybe giving information that they might want to twist or misinterpret, but just enough to where you can explain in detail what that happens during that task, what you're doing for this person or what they are unable to do during the task. And that can help a lot, right? But it is important to remember what you say the year before. Because again, if you're describing the need and it is different, then your hours are going to adjust almost always, right? Other things, so that kind of goes in line with like being, not being prepared, underreporting the needs. Another issue is like missing your appointments. So With reassessments, it's very, very common for people to get their assessment scheduled on the calendar, and then they reach out and they're like, "Hey, you know what? I just got a letter saying that you're coming by on Friday next week. However, I have something really important at 12 o'clock. It's a Facebook live stream with Caleb, and I have to watch it. Or maybe you have a doctor's appointment, or maybe you have a medical emergency, or a funeral, or something, right? And that date just does not work. And so you let your social worker know. It is very important that that gets scheduled really quickly right after that. Okay, because if you continue to push it out too far, some social workers are willing to work with you. Some social workers are great in that way, but others, they have a strict deadline that they have to work with, that their supervisors give to them, where they have to get cases kind of closed out for the year up at a certain point. And so if you can't sneak in your assessment within that certain point, you run the risk of IHSS terminating the benefit in general, where they'll just say, "Oh, you can't meet on Friday next week? Well, sorry, that's my deadline. Therefore, I have to terminate your benefit." There's probably lots of people who are watching here, or who are going to find this video and hear that and think, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly what happened to me." I know that because we have countless amounts of families we've worked with over the years where that has happened to them. And so, thankfully, you can't terminate somebody's benefit simply because they can't meet the deadline, because of a rescheduling issue, a scheduling conflict. Okay. So if you need to reschedule your assessment, it's not that big of a deal. If IHSS or your social worker says we have to do it by Friday, if we don't do it by Friday, then XYZ will happen. That's when, again, you don't have to freak out. You don't have to get scared of that. You just have to say, you know what, that's your deadline. I respect that. However, it's not going to be possible for us to do it by that time. So I'd love to speak with a supervisor or somebody who can help you extend that deadline, because we have to do the assessment after that. I have something very important on that day. We cannot meet unless you can do it over the phone or whatever, right? But they are not allowed to terminate your benefits simply because you have to reschedule. Okay. Now, that's if you reschedule once, maybe twice. But if you are unable to get your assessment on the calendar and you've rescheduled it 3, 4, 5 times, your benefit's getting terminated. I'm just going to let you know that they're going to terminate it. You cannot push it out months and months and months and not expect the county to think that you're just kind of wasting that time. Okay. So be mindful of that. If you're going to schedule it, just try and be fair with the social worker, right? And expect fairness from them. If they're not being fair to you, then maybe it's time to connect with an advocate or somebody who can help you with that. And then, of course, the social workers themselves. So a lot of people will have a change in social worker where they apply one year and it's an awesome social worker. The social worker, listened to their needs. Maybe, it got really deep and emotional. These are, again, this is an emotional benefit. Maybe you shared some really deep challenges you're dealing with, and you cry. The social worker cries with you and shares in that concern and wants to help. And you get protective supervision. You get all the hours, and it was just an incredible experience with your social worker. You're so thankful for them. And then the next year rolls around, the assessment, and you get, instead of Jane Smith, you get Joe Smith, who's a different social worker, who is brand new to your case, and they've never cried at any assessment. They don't care about you. They don't care about your child. They don't even have anybody in their life with special needs, so they have no idea what you're going through. And all they know is boxes they got to check from their supervisor's instruction. And there's things that they've noticed that maybe they don't agree with from the previous social worker. Maybe the social worker granted a specific amount of time in a category, and they're like, you know what? I don't even grant that time for children of this age. That doesn't even apply for me, in my opinion. And they reduce the hours, or they terminate it completely, right? So a change in social worker can affect that. And I'm sure a lot of you have had that experience with ups and downs with social workers, where you've had some that have been awesome, some that have been miserable, and some you can't remember their names because they just came in and out, right? So a change in social worker can affect things depending on how they interpret the law, depending on how their experiences with families, their professionalism, their experience as a social worker, right? All of these things can play a role. So it's important to be prepared for any social worker that comes to the home, okay? Whether it be an awesome social worker or a miserable one. And so you got to be prepared on how to navigate that, and how to, because you're not going to change much. If you know kind of the formula of how to navigate that, you don't have to change too much what you do. You can just be prepared for no matter who you speak to, because there's a way that you can convey the needs to any social worker and cover all of the things that you need to cover without jeopardizing the integrity of the hours themselves in totality. Okay. And so if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about how we do that with our families, call our office. We'd love to share with you some tactics, some strategies, and some encouragement on how you can navigate any type of social worker that you deal with. All right. Stella, yes, often many ask because they will still get paper. Personally, I don't mind. Just curious. Thanks. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Actually, I've never thought about the pay stub side of things being paper. Because I think there's a way you can generate them like PDF wise through the timesheet portal, right? Or am I wrong? You guys let me know. Caleb, is there an exact way to? Oh, sorry, I got pushed back up here. Let me go back. Alyssa, how do we apply for the exemption? So the exemption, which would be exemption 2, is an exemption that you can get, for those who don't know, past the maximum amount of hours as a provider. So as a provider, you can only claim up to 283 per month unless you get the exemption 2 approved, which allows you to claim up to 360 a month, right? So Alyssa, to answer your question, you have to apply by reaching out to your social worker or reaching out to IHSS. There has to be an abundance of left unpaid hours in your home because of a second recipient or a third recipient. And you have to show basically proof that there is no other way for their hours to get worked unless you are their provider. And so some counties, again, are more strict than others. So some counties will kind of put you through the ringer and they'll say, okay, well, in order for you to get approved the exemption, you have to show that you've called 50 people and you interviewed half of them. And there has to be solid reasons as to why they cannot be the provider. Or there's a language barrier, or you're in a rural area. Maybe you live up in the mountains and it's 30 minutes from the nearest provider and they can't do that drive every day, whatever it may be, right? And so you're going to have to go through that process a little bit, but the way you apply is you just have to reach out to the county and let them know that there are an abundance of hours that are being left unpaid because you're capped out and there's nobody else that can do the work. Okay. And then they'll prompt you on what next steps will be. So again, some counties are like, oh, no problem, approved, exemption 2, you got it. And then other counties, they will make you go through that process of seeing if you actually meet the criteria for it. Thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around for 30 minutes so far. We've got a really good chunk of people. So if you want to share the video, now is the time. If a few of you can give it a like and a love and a share, I appreciate you already doing that. I see that. But sharing these to support groups and other families who may need to hear this information is really helpful for us as well as for them. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Adriana, I have one more question. If we are represented by you guys and our reassessment is up, is there more discovery in which we are going for? Yes. How much conversation is directed towards us? In other words, do we have to say much, or is it most likely talk between adult advocacy and the social worker? I'm pretty nervous. Okay. So every advocate is a little different, right? So I can kind of give you an idea of maybe what you can expect working with us. So we approach things a little differently for every case that we have, every family we work with. And so it kind of depends. Well, I'll simplify it as best I can. So we will speak on your behalf when it is necessary. So are we going to join you for the assessment and answer every question the social worker asks? Probably not. We're really good at training you and educating you on what IHSS is looking for and how you can convey this without lying, without exaggerating. We're never going to tell somebody to say something that's not truthful, right? But there's ways that you can describe an example of something, especially for something like protective supervision, like you mentioned, Adriana, that we can teach you how you say that, okay? Because a lot of people will give too much information that doesn't apply to the point, and then IHSS uses all those extra reasons you gave as why this example you gave doesn't work for protective supervision, when in reality it does. So yeah, to answer your question, usually when you work with an advocate, and again, I'm not speaking for everybody else because we're all different, but we would be in charge of the paperwork for you. So we don't want you sending anything directly to IHSS. We don't want you having private conversations with your social worker. We want to be a part of every single step, whether it be the application, the assessment, the appeal. We want to submit all the documents for you. We want to review it for you before IHSS sees any of it, right? Because if it's something that maybe is wrong, maybe it's the IEP and the IEP is wrong. We don't want to give that to the social worker because they're just going to use that against you, right? We want to get that fixed first. That's why it's important for us to review it first. And then once it's in a place where we feel comfortable with IHSS seeing it, then we'll send it to them for you. And then yes, post-assessment, any conversations, any questions a social worker or the county may have, they can direct them to us. We can take care of it for you. Hopefully that answers your question. We do also long-term representation with all of our families. So we're a relationship advocacy group. We're not a transactional advocacy group. So a relationship group, the difference between transactional and relationship is that we continue on being your advocate even after we've helped you gather those hours. So we would be hired to do a job, which is to help you obtain these hours. And then depending on the agreement that we have, we can be your advocate forever. At no additional cost or whatever. That's a little bit about kind of how we operate. So if you want to learn a little bit more to see if we might be a good fit for you, get on my calendar. I'd love to chat with you about that. We've got Richard from YouTube. Hopefully you're still watching. You said apply for conservatorship to get the exemption also. So yeah, conservatorships can be really helpful if you have an adult with special needs. I would recommend talking to a paralegal or a law firm to see if the conservatorship is something that should apply to your loved one. As far as the exemption goes, it can help for the exemption. But in general, conservatorship can just help you navigate the IHSS case for that person just in general. It gives you that power to do so. Ms. Kapoor, I have a question. I've seen people talking about hours being reduced when a child starts school. Say, for instance, my son has 39 hours unmet need for IHSS. If my son starts school this year, if they're going to decrease hours, will they take it out from the unmet hours or ask them unmet? Sorry, it's a long question. You're good. So, excuse me. The only way that having your child enrolled in school or extended programs or day programs or extracurricular activities, the only way they'll reduce the hours is when you look in your notice of action. There's a column at the top that says alternative. Oh my gosh, what does it say? It says, oh my gosh, what does it say? Let me pull up an example here. I want to make sure I read this correctly. Okay, so IHSS NOA. Okay, so it says services you refused or get from others. Okay, so there's a column at the top of your notice right there. It says services you refused or get from others. They'll use that column as a tool to prorate and take some time away from certain tasks that these other agencies or people are doing for you. Okay, so if you've got, let's just say, 6 hours a week in bowel and bladder care, because you have a child who is still in diapers, they require a lot of attention and support. If they're in school, you know, and having these extracurricular activities where they're out of the house for 8 hours or 9 hours, then they have to assume that the school or these extracurricular activities, this extended care program, they have to assume that they're at least changing their diaper a couple of times. So in that case, they will reduce some of the hours, but it should not be a significant amount. It should not be like make or break on how many hours. There's not too much you can do to avoid that if that's the case. So hopefully that answers your question. As far as unmet hours themselves, again, that doesn't really apply to you have kind of a two-part question here. So the only time that the hours will be reduced because of school is if the school time frame is extended, where you have a significant amount of hours based on a task that the school probably does for them at some point. And that's how those hours can be reduced. Okay, we've got a few more questions here. Let me come back to you guys. Hang tight, please don't go anywhere. Let me go back to my reasons here. We're on reason number 4, so let me pull this one up. Reason number 4, you were denied or delayed doctor's forms. Okay, so this one, there's one form in particular. So when you apply for IHSS, there's one form, and that is the SOC 873, which is the healthcare certification form. You have to get that form done within the deadline that's presented. And usually it's a 45-day deadline when you receive that form in the mail. When you apply, usually a couple of weeks later, you'll get that form in the mail, and it'll have a deadline at the bottom. If it doesn't have a deadline, then technically it cannot be more than 60 days older or newer from the application date. So it has to be done within 60 days of both sides of the application being submitted. Okay. If you have an assessment and the social worker is requesting documentation for XYZ reason, maybe it's for protective supervision, maybe it's for paramedical services, like you started up some physical therapy, or maybe you have physical therapy for the child at the house. You have to prove that you actually do this. You have to get a letter from the doctor or a statement saying that you do these things, there is kind of a time frame there where you have to get those things done for the social worker. Okay. Rule of thumb is 90 days from the assessment. So, or 90 days after the assessment. Okay. So when you have your assessment with the social worker, if they make a decision, there's still that 90-day window where you can provide information so that their decision can be adjusted. It's okay if you have an assessment and the social worker said, hey, I need you to gather this information to help prove the need for these tasks. However, for now, I'm going to generate a notice and I'm going to generate a decision. And then once those things come to me, I can adjust it from there. Okay, that's okay. It happens. I don't like that. I think that's really dumb. But again, sometimes social workers have to do that based on their deadlines. Okay, so if you are unable to get those forms back to the doctor or documentation, whatever they're requesting, that may affect the overall hours. That may reduce them. So that's a big reason. Absolutely. Or the forms are incomplete, right? Or maybe they're completed incorrectly and you send them in. So I would recommend that you work with doctors who are familiar with the process of IHSS. If you've got Kaiser, I'm really sorry. I know Kaiser is really difficult to work with when it comes to this. However, most medical professionals have experience with IHSS. They probably have a lot of clients who have had it and have had them fill out forms for them. So you're probably not the first person to bring an IHSS form to them to complete. But I would recommend that if you are working with a doctor who has no clue or any interest in helping you with IHSS forms, it's time to probably get a referral for a new physician. Okay. It's important that if you have IHSS, and let's just say you have a lot of it for your child or your loved one, then having a doctor who understands that world is going to be pivotal to making sure that the hours are accurately assessed every year. And the doctor plays a role with that. So if you have a doctor who's not helpful in any way, find one who can be. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, right? But it is something that I would recommend you try and do. If you've got a great doctor and you love them, they just don't have a lot of knowledge with IHSS, and that would be your opportunity to educate them on that and say, hey, I really need you to be on board with this. I really need you to be educated on it. I can't get another doctor. You're the only person I can. I love working with you. So here's some information that can be really helpful in the future. And, relationship as best you can. I know that's so much easier for me to say than what is the reality here, but just a quick tip. Okay. Justine, when you say provider, meaning someone else to help take care of the child, in that case, does the provider have to live in the home or just someone who helps care for the child? So with IHSS, you have the IHSS recipient. Excuse me. I over-explain a lot. You have your IHSS recipient, which is the person that's going to be receiving the hours, right? That's your autistic child. That's grandma who has diabetes and they need help. That's the recipient of IHSS. The provider is the person that works for that person and claims on their hours and gets paid. So there's two types of providers. There's a parent provider and a paid parent provider and a paid provider, which is just a regular provider who may not be a parent or not. Those are the two forms of providers. And out of those two forms, there's another type of provider for both of those, which is live in or out of home. So anybody can be the provider for this person. It can be you as the parent or sister, cousin, whoever you are. It can be a neighbor. It can be a friend. It doesn't matter. Anybody can be the paid provider from IHSS. They don't have to live in the home. They don't have to live out of the home. But things do change if you are a live-in home provider versus an out-of-home provider. If you're a live-in provider, you live under the same roof as that individual, then the income is tax exempt. You don't have to pay taxes on it. You can opt in or out at that point. If they're an out-of-home provider, if you're caring for a loved one who does not live in your neighborhood or in your home, or maybe it's for your child and you don't want to be the provider, so you hire somebody else. If they don't live under the same roof, then they are going to be paying taxes on the income that they receive. Hopefully that answers your question, Justine. I'm so glad you're here. Great question. Hey, John, thank you. You already hired us. Oh, awesome. Sweet. Ms. Cooper, not yet. He will start school this year. Only has 3 hours of preschool. Okay, gotcha. So it shouldn't affect too much. It shouldn't. If it does, then there might be something that needs to be looked at for you. Mariella, hello. Are hours reduced due to child having therapies outside of the home? Another good question, kind of similar to the school one. So yes, technically, if you are if the child has a significant amount of time during the week where they're receiving therapeutic interventions, whether it be through ABA at a clinic or private OT, private speech, then they can reduce the hours based on you not being present during that time and they providing the support there, right? So again, usually it's not much though. It's usually not much, but if they take away a tiny bit of hours, there's not too much you can do. Some people will see like a huge reduction because their child has school and then ABA out of home, but that's just not how it works. It's not how it works. Christy, can you discuss respite from regional center and how it goes with IHSS? Yes. So for those who don't know, respite is free caregiving services from IHSS. I'm sorry, from regional center, excuse me. So it's a service that you can receive if your child or your loved one is a client of regional center. So if you are working every day for IHSS, you are their caregiver, you're their parent, you're all these things, and you need a break. You need somebody to come in to kind of relieve you of the duties so that you can go shopping. You can go on a date. You can go to the gym, whatever you need to do. You can utilize respite where somebody who's paid by a respite company through the regional center would come in and do that. So for example, I have 3 siblings who have autism and Down syndrome. They're all adults now. And I have a lot of other siblings. I come from a family of 11 children. And so I'm one of 11. And 3 of my siblings have autism and Down syndrome. So I've got a bunch of other siblings who are neurotypical. And so a couple of my siblings are hired as respite workers for my siblings with Down syndrome and autism. So my parents care for my siblings with special needs, but my siblings who do not have special needs, they'll come in as respite workers and care for them during those times so that my parents can have a break. So that's respite in a nutshell. How that works with IHSS is that it goes hand in hand. As long as you're not claiming the IHSS hours during the same time as the respite worker is claiming their hours, then you're okay. So you have to claim around it. That's how it works together, right? So you can either claim the hours before the respite worker comes, you claim the hours after the respite worker comes, or both. You scatter them, right? So that's how it works. So respite cannot affect the IHSS hours. The only rule there is that you just don't claim the hours at the same time that the respite worker is working their job. Thank you, Ms. Kapoor. Christy, again, how does in-home ABA where parents are still present impact IHSS hours? So that won't affect it too much. So there shouldn't be like that period of, or that time taken away for the like the refusal column that we talked about, hours you refuse or get from others. If it's in-home ABA, it won't affect it, usually. Alyssa, is it okay to fill out the form for the doctor? Ooh, okay. So I'm not going to tell you to do anything, okay? However, if you fill out the form for the doctor and they sign it, if IHSS asks you if that's what happened, you have to tell them the truth, right? You cannot lie about that. IHSS does not like that. Judges do not like that. They want the doctor to complete the forms themselves, okay? However, most doctors want you there. Not most doctors. A lot of doctors will love it when you're there with them filling it out and helping them fill it out, right? They may have some questions. They want to clarify some things before they complete it. So do some people fill out the forms and submit them with the doctor's signature? Yes, of course. Again, whether there's a regulation that says something about that, I won't tap into that too much because, again, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will say this. If you do fill it out and you have the doctor sign it because the doctor agrees to it, if IHSS asks you if that's what happened, or if you go in front of a judge because you appealed it, if they ask you, you do have to say that that's what happened, okay? And that won't look great because that is something that's more so frowned upon. I'm not familiar with a regulation that says anything other than that. So what I would recommend in a long roundabout way, Alyssa, is I probably would not complete the doctor's form, okay? If you want to complete it yourself and then bring a copy of it and say, hey, this is how I would answer the questions, but I would like for you to do it in your own words, that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. Estella, didn't change anything in our experience, just sharing. Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing. Janine, what is the difference between respite worker and an aide? Are they the same? So with regional center, they have like companionship aides and things like that, where it is slightly different from respite. They don't even really call it an aide. So there's a few different things. So it's respite, personal assistance. ILS workers, which is independent living services. So there's different types of aides, if you will, that can come in and do different tasks, different jobs. So a respite worker is more of like babysitting. That is somebody who comes in and acts as a caregiver for you so that you can have a break. Okay. So for adults who may not need babysitting, that might look more like a companionship partner, somebody who can come in and help them and hang out with them. But again, if that's the case, they may not need respite. They may need more of a personal assistant, or they might be under the ILS program, independent living services, where they can have aides or companions help them through life skills, right? So that hopefully that answers your question. Respite is really the only form of like babysitting that regional center offers. Chrissy, for parent providers, if you stay within the hours allotted, can you claim 23 hours and 59 minutes on a day? So we've talked about this before. I wouldn't recommend claiming more than 12 hours a day. I wouldn't. But again, technically you can. I don't believe there is an actual time frame. And I always forget because we kind of come to a conclusion of what it is and then it changes, or it's my mind changing. I don't know. Teresa, if you're still watching, I know Dakota has talked about this a lot. I think he's done a lot more research on this than I can, or that I have, sorry. So I think that there isn't like a regulation that says you're capped at a certain amount of hours per day. You just can't go over the maximum weekly. So yes, could you claim 23 hours and 59 minutes in a day? I believe you can. I don't think you're going to get a strike on your record for that with IHSS. But I would recommend probably scattering the hours appropriately throughout the week, just so it stays, the same every week. Okay. Ms. Cooper said there's a social rec coach as well. Yeah. So that kind of goes in line with like the ILS stuff, companionship stuff. There's a lot of different terms with regional center for different services, for different types of aides or caregivers. But yes, a coach for a social or a recreational service that is also available as well. Thank you for that, Ms. Cooper. All right, last one, and then we're done for the day, guys. Fraud flags and perceived misuse. So fraud is a big one. I'm going to say probably number one reason why people get a reduction of hours or lose their hours in general. Okay. It is easy to avoid fraud if you're not committing fraud. Okay. So if you're not committing fraud and you're following all the rules, you're going to be okay. Don't worry. A lot of people get really scared of the audits that happen throughout IHSS. There have been recent times in recent years where IHSS has come down really, really hard on the audits, where they're just knocking on everybody's door who's got protective supervision. And during those times, we do see protective supervision being reduced, specifically PS, protective supervision. We see that being removed more so during those audits than we do during the typical times, because that's when they come into your home, they do an unannounced visit, they do a little bit of investigative work, right? But again, if you have nothing to worry about, if you never leave this person home alone because they have protective supervision, and you meet all the criteria, you're checking all the boxes, you don't have to worry. So fraud flags are going to be more so for people who social workers see kind of an issue with. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I went to a conference. Me and the team here called Advocacy went to a state hearings conference for IHSS and things, and there was an appeals rep who worked for the county who said that they live in a really small county. They're the only appeals rep who does all the hearings for their county for IHSS. And they'll have, somebody that they've known their whole life in this small town, Timmy, who applies, and or Gary, right? And they show up to Gary's home and they're like, Gary, I've known you your whole life. You're not disabled. Like, what's going on? And then Gary shows them evidence of why they need protective supervision now or other things. And maybe they, have to grant it, right? Or maybe they don't. And they go about their day and a week goes by and then they see Gary at the grocery store doing their shopping like they've seen Gary do 100 times. That's fraud, right? If you're claiming you're disabled and you can't do certain things, and then the appeals rep sees them out in the open and sees that these are a lot of things that IHSS deals with. There's a lot of fraud within government financial programs, social services, right? So there is going to be kind of a little bit of I don't want to say sensitive nature here, but they're going to be on high alert, I would say. And so for some families, they can feel like they're being attacked. They can feel like they're being targeted. It can feel like they're being harassed. And in some cases, that is the case. However, for the vast majority, as long as you're following the rules, you meet with your social worker on time every single year, you're giving the documents that they request, you should be okay. But if you are misusing the benefit, if you are abusing it in any way, or you show some signs of fraud to a social worker, they're going to come down on that. Just a heads up. And this goes in, again, kind of back into that topic of like delaying assessments, right? So if you're delaying your assessment, that's a red flag to a social worker. If you're pushing this out more and more and more, and they just aren't able to come to your house, they're going to think maybe this person doesn't even live there anymore. Okay? Maybe their IHSS recipient passed away, and they're claiming the benefit fraudulently. That's why they haven't brought it. That's why they won't let me visit them yet, right? So that's one big way that they can kind of stick you with a fraud flag and terminate the benefit because of that assumption. Rightfully so in some cases. Withholding information is another one. So if IHSS is requesting an IEP, they're requesting certain documents and you just refuse to give them, sometimes they can see that as you withholding important information because you're afraid of what's on there. And again, there's tactics and ways where, there's kind of a time and a place of when you can provide a document and withhold a document without giving signs of fraud. But if you do not give them forms that they're requesting simply because you just are choosing not to, they oftentimes will use that as a reason for kind of a fraud red flag of saying there's going to be information on there that you don't want us to see, therefore you're not giving it to me. And so just some things to consider. And let me know if there's anybody here in the comments before we roll. I'm about to head out of here in just a moment. But if there's anybody here who has experienced fraud or an experience like that, or like you were kind of harassed by the county or questioned because of some red flags, let us know. Andy, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad I can share some information here. I am nobody special. I'm one big dummy who has spent a lot of time around this program, IHSS. It's what put food on my table growing up as a child. I've been around the world with special needs. So I can't tell you how to put new floors in your house. I can't tell you how to fix your car, but I can tell you a heck of a whole lot about this program, IHSS. So, all right. I think we're about done, everybody. I don't see any more comments. I don't think I missed anyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're right at almost 1 o'clock. So I gotta run because Nicole is going live at 1 o'clock in Spanish. So if you are somebody who speaks Spanish and you want to hear the same information from Nicole at 1 o'clock, I think she'll be doing it today. If not, it might be one of our other advocates stepping in. But thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and being here for an hour with me. I had a couple of extra minutes today. Usually I'm like a hard stop at 12:40, 12:45 nowadays, but I got to squeak in a few extra minutes. Teresa, you said there is no stated IHSS daily provider limit. There is a WPCS daily provider limit of 12 hours. Okay, perfect. So hopefully that answers your question from earlier. Was that was Christy. So Christy, you asked about claiming a maximum of 23 hours to 59 minutes. Looks like you can. There's no actual regulation for it. So awesome. All right. Thank you guys for the comments. I appreciate it. Oh, Nicole is out sick today, guys. So Teresa, I'm not sure. She won't be live today. I don't know if there's anybody in her place. She won't be live today. Okay. Gotcha. Well, thank you, Teresa, for the heads up. I appreciate it. Estella, I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you. Appreciate it. I think we might have a couple more minutes then. Hang tight. Let me see if I can answer some of these questions real quick for you guys. Justine, my youngest was just diagnosed with autism, but my oldest has been for 3 years. How long should I wait to apply for both, or can I get started now? You can get started now. Yeah, there's no wait. Your youngest was just diagnosed, but your oldest has been for 3 years. Yeah, if you have the formal diagnosis, I would say get ready. Get ready. I would recommend talking with an advocate like us. Get on my calendar. I'd love to maybe give you an idea, kind of a game plan of action, a strategy for you. And that might help kind of ease your mind a little bit on that timeliness of when you should apply. Ms. Cooper, you said I'm still concerned about signing up with the authorization form with IHS with social worker. Last year she made signs on financial doctor. That's okay. No other. Okay, so yeah. So if you don't know, IHSS has an authorization to release medical information form, ROMI or whatever they call it. And so that is not a form you have to sign. I have seen some crazy ones over the years in certain counties where they will include certain things in there that they should never have authorization to view. But by signing that form, you're giving the social worker permission to do some additional research. So an authorization to release medical information, if you sign that and agree to everything that's listed on there, usually it'll say the doctor, regional center, therapy, the school, right? It gives them permission to go talk to them and meet with them without you present. And that's not something that I personally would ever feel comfortable with if I was an IHSS provider caring for a loved one of mine. So when we're helping a family and advocating for them as their representation, we will usually discourage them from signing that, simply so that there's more of an isolated area for information to be funneled through. Okay. Because if we've helped you gather information to present to the social worker, but then the social worker goes off and grabs all their own information, by the time information is being looked at, it's going to be different. And that can confuse things. So we've actually been encouraged by the state of California to go about it the way that we already do. So you do not have to sign it, Ms. Kapoor. If you're nervous about it, don't sign it. Thank you, everybody, for such the nice comments. I appreciate you all. Christy, how do you watch past events we've done? So we don't film our events, but we do these live streams every single week. And so they're all saved onto our page here on Facebook, and they're also saved onto YouTube. Not all of them are on YouTube, but we do have some on YouTube. IHSS does request IEPs usually if you're pursuing something like protective supervision, almost always. And happy Easter, everybody. Happy Easter break. Hope you all enjoy yourselves. And I think we're going to leave it on that note. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget to give the stream a like or a love or a share. Tag somebody if you can. That really goes a long ways. It helps us, and it helps others like yourself who are looking for this information. But I'm so glad that we got to do this topic today. This is a fun one. If you have some topics or some things you want us to cover, let us know. We'd love to design kind of an outline and a plan so that we can talk about it. So if there's anything in particular, message us, call us, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. All right, so I'll come back to your guys' questions because I'm going to end here. Okay, so I hope everybody has a wonderful Friday. Thank you again so much for your amazing questions and comments and watching every single week. Let's all wish Nicole good health. I'm sorry to hear that she's sick. I did not know that. Hopefully she feels better. Hopefully she'll be better and back next week. I think next week we got Dakota. Is it Q&A next week? I forget. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoy your Easter. And if you're on break this week, I hope you enjoy your break. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.